I learned about Andy from the Range Master Tactical Conference, but when I learned about Jeremy, that was from the After Action Project, from the podcast that you guys, I think it's weekly that you guys release episodes, and you guys have been having some really cool episodes lately. How long have you been doing that, and what gave you the idea to start up a podcast?
So we've been doing it for a few years now, and we're on like episode 12. Um, so, so initially, right, it was, I'm coming home from work one night, and I'm like, man, I have all this extra time. What can we do? And looking at the podcast space, and we're good buddies with Sean Heron of the We Like Shooting podcast and Firearms Radio Network. And I was like, man, it'd be pretty cool to have like the students' perspective on firearms training courses, right? So how cool would it be if, if I was, to go attend these classes and do an after action report, on a podcast. And I said, man, I can't do that, right? I can't take a weekend off every month or, 4 weekends off every month. But there are probably enough students going around right now, probably enough students every week or weekend taking a firearms course somewhere. And then I was like, man, maybe we'll do a two-part podcast. Part one is the student, part two is the instructor. That way we have an honest opinion of the course from the student, and then we can kind of have the instructor backfill and kind of share some of their insight and philosophy on their training methodology and how they teach and what they teach. And logistically, that was a nightmare, right? As you know, Memphis, it's a difficult scheduling people and blocking off that time. So it morphed into a podcast with the student and the instructor. We try to focus heavily on the student's perspective, and then the instructor's there to kind of to backfill and that information. But it's selfish, right? Like there are a ton of guys out there doing classes. The majority of these podcasts that we do, we're like, all right, man, put that on the list of guys that we need to train with. So, and then Andy has provided insight and taken my kind of 10,000 level idea of this deal and really honed it in and driven me and driven us to what it is now. And Andy could probably share some battles that we've had in the beginning with my stubbornness and how he's kind of helped shape and mold it into what it has become.
Yeah, I don't know if you see, I got a scar right over one of my eyes. I think that was from Jeremy probably headbutting me at one point but yeah, we did. Jeremy's like a brother to me. He's family. He lives 5 minutes from me. We started out, yeah, we're going to teach together. And then it was kind of, well, I want to do it my way and you want to do it your way. And then we kind of butted heads. And then one day, all of a sudden, it just seemed like it kind of clicked. And I couldn't have a better partner teaching because we both bounce things off each other. After range days, me and him will shoot and we'll compete against each other, which has also made me a better shooter. And me having the ability to travel and go to TACCon and all these other courses, I'm able to bring these to Jeremy and say, hey man, check out these things. What do you think of this? And we've really been able to hone in something really good with not only practical defense, but with also the after action project, because we both have the experience of both being a student and an instructor. And I think it's just worked out really well.
Man, that's such a cool idea too. Just getting up with folks. Like, what kind of classes really attract you to like make someone kind of a guest? Like, what would you have to hear about someone in order for you to say, I want to have them on the show?
Part of it's easy, right? If you're in the gun industry, the big names in town. You know who you want on here. You want the Clint Smiths, you want the Tim Herons, you want all of the top people, you want the Memphises on there that's coming up. But for me, the way I started like learning which instructor I wanted was actually going to their courses. I go to a course and I'm like, Jeremy, we got to have this guy on. Either he's grumpy old man and he's hilarious to have on and he's got some good insights, or it's just somebody that I really latched onto and it said, man, all the stuff that he teaches I can relate to and it really works. And that's where I kind of, when Jeremy says, hey, who do you think we should have on next? And I start rolling through the Rolodex of the people I've trained with or I've spoken to on Facebook, and just making those little connections like you and I did at TACCon Memphis is kind of how I look at things as far as who I want to bring on our show. And I don't know if Jeremy's got kind of a different plan, but that's my outlook.
Yeah. So when I first got into the firearms industry, about 12 years ago now, there were a couple instructors that I looked up to, and I thought they were the be all and end all. And if I went through their instructor certification program or whatever, that would mean that I rubber stamp me. I got the rubber stamp. I'm good to go. And the more and more that I became involved in the training aspect and seeking knowledge aspect, it really shifted my perspective on what makes a great instructor, and but also who instructors should seek approval from. Not that we need to seek approval from or that we need other people's approval, but it's very telling when your competitor respects you. When your competitor respects you enough to tell somebody hey, if you're not going to train with us, go train with these guys. And then once we look at it on a national level, when you have instructors like Jedi, right, saying, hey, you need to train with Tim Herron, and you have Tim Herron saying, hey, you need to train with AJ, right? And then so that kind of creates a spider web and a network of people, of instructors that are doing it the right way. They're doing it with integrity, and what they're teaching is worth the time and money that you have to put forth. And then the cool thing about that is kind of where we get into like the gateway instructors, not lumping us in there, right? But with the at one point Brian Hill would be considered a gateway instructor, right? AJ Zito would have been considered a gateway instructor, right? Where these guys, they have what it takes to travel nationally and do this stuff, right? But really to have conversation with those folks on the podcast and really tease out what has gotten them to where they're at and what they think is critical to teach and impart in their students, is really where some of these gold mine podcast or these great episodes that we have had. And then there are a couple instructors where you get on and you're like, okay, yep, that validates what the industry says about you when you're not around.
Yeah. Andy, what do you think? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't want to pick out any specific guests, but we've had a couple guests on our show that it indeed, Jeremy hit the nail on the head. It's like, oh, okay, now we see all the little discussions, and I'm one that's not afraid to kind of poke the bear on occasion. And there's a couple instructors out there that have been on our show that I'm not fans of, and they still have a good product, some of them, and it may be a personal thing, but yeah, I agree with Jeremy. There's times where we've had some instructors where I'm like, oh well, we're not going to have that person on again, but being an after action project, what we do, obviously it's really easy. We're going to come on and we're going to talk about this instructor's course and what he does great and what his niche is, but there's also should be a little bit of quote unquote controversy, right? Well, people are saying this about you on social media, maybe why? And I don't think we get in enough of that, but maybe it's something that we visit down the road.
Okay. Folks, I want to give a very special thank you to Top Gun Shooting Range here in Memphis, Tennessee. This is where I teach personally. Folks, I do not shill for anybody. I promote the causes that I believe in, and I believe in Top Gun Memphis. Come by and see us.